Imagination is an OP power for sure. After all, it has basically an unlimited potential. But if that's true, then how did Gremmy lose to Zaraki? His power is literally the power to transform anything he imagines into reality. How someone with such a power can be defeated? Many people think that the reason is that Gremmy tried to imagine himself becoming stronger than Zaraki, but his body couldn't handle such an absurd amount of power, and he ended up dying. Even Gremmy himself actually says that in the manga. However, let's take a closer look at it. First of all, I totally disagree with this statement, so I decided to make this video to tell you guys my understanding about this fight, which is different from the other tons of videos that I've watched about this subject on YouTube. To be honest, was the main reason why I've created this channel in the first place. Let's dig into it. I won't analyze the fight detail by detail because there are dozens of other videos doing exactly the same thing on YouTube. And I don't think it makes sense to deliver to you guys a content that is just more of the same. So I'll try to be more direct. Gremmy is the Stern Reader V, the Visionary, and his first appearance is in the 1000-Year Blood War arc, the Quincy invasion, so to speak. He only appears in 8 chapters, but it's more than enough to be considered one of the most famous Quincies. Mainly because of how OP he is. Even though he just looks like a kid, his power is basically the power of a god. In his own words, his power is the power of imagination, and he can turn into reality anything he imagines. And he has shown evidence that he wasn't lying during his fight against Zaraki. Well, he created lava, tons of weapons and bombs. He managed to harden his own body to become as hard as steel. He managed to turn Yachiro's bones into something as fragile as cookies. He can even create life. And he did that on at least 2 occasions in the manga. He can also create copies of himself and thus multiply his own power of imagination, being able to create meteors and even a dimensional vortex in space where he tried to leave Zaraki there to die. But as we know, Zaraki is not an easy guy to kill, and he managed to resist all this. But Gremmy did manage to force Zaraki to use his Shikai for the first time, and I would say that's quite an achievement. So what I mean is, this is all amazing and all, however, is that enough to say that the power of imagination is limitless? Or better yet, is it enough for us to say for sure that Gremmy is the strongest Stern Reader of all? Well, in the manga we saw that several other Quincies, even very powerful ones, had a certain fear of Gremmy, because really his power is something very problematic to deal with. And in the novels he is also mentioned as being recognized as the most powerful Quincy. But even so, I think we are failing to see the true level of Gremmy's power as a character, and I think we have to evaluate him as a whole, with his personality, his experience and such, and not only his power alone. It's one thing to say that he's potentially the most powerful, that is, his power has such great or even limitless potential that he can become incomparable, but that doesn't mean that he is at that level right now. So let's talk about his weaknesses. First, the things he imagines are not permanent. An example of this is when he imagined Yachiro's bones becoming as fragile as cookies, and this effect disappeared after he ended up focusing his concentration on Zaraki and forgot to keep that imagination activated, causing Yachiro's bones to return to normal. Then, when Zaraki hits him with the Shikai, and realizes that Gremmy had forgotten to harden his own body again. That is, Gremmy needs to keep their different imaginations activated if he wants their effects to be a reality, and that must require a very high level of concentration. In addition, he may end up being negatively affected by his own imagination. This is also mentioned by Zaraki when Gremmy almost imagines his own defeat becoming a reality, and this is all very explicit in the manga, but there are still the implicit things. Want an example? Guys, if he could just imagine anything really coming true, he could just imagine Zaraki dead. He could just imagine that Zaraki is dying, and that's all. But that wouldn't work. In the novels, it is also mentioned that the limit of Gremmy's power has a relation to the level of Ryatsu his enemy has. As Quincies manipulate Reishi, it is understood that Gremmy's powers also depends on these spirit particles. Anyway, just understand that Gremmy cannot just go around imagining the death of all the enemies he wants to defeat. He's really going to have to try a little harder, okay? Anyway, now that we have already talked a little about its advantages and disadvantages, It is also worth mentioning that many people believe that he may be the brain of the Soul King, since something about this is also mentioned in one of the novels, which wouldn't be so strange since Pernaida and Gerard are also part of the Soul King. And they are part of the Quincy army as well. It's confusing, I know, it's never been explained in the manga in details, and in the novels it's covered a little more, but not that much either. So anyway, it's open to speculation. Now let's talk about the real reason Gremmy lost the fight. Please follow my reasoning, okay? Gremmy's power is imagination. However, imagination does have limits, depending on the user's ability, depending on the user creativity and all of that. And Gremmy appeared to be extremely inexperienced in battle, and had perhaps never fought anyone who came even close to offering him a challenge. This is implied in the fight against Zaraki, when Gremmy cannot contain his own excitement and he gets very motivated to beat the Shinigami. It's the first time Gremmy really wants to win a battle and subdue the enemy completely. He tries everything from lava to meteors and fails to beat Zaraki, which gets him very frustrated. Then he gets tired of the fight and he thinks, well, if none of this is working, then I shall imagine that I'm stronger than you. Simple as that. However, this is the main problem here. Gremmy had never faced anyone even close to Zaraki's strength, and when he tried to imagine something or someone being stronger than Zaraki, he just collapsed. His imagination reached the limit. He could not conceive the existence of anything or anyone as powerful as that. So, think with me. If his power depends on imagination to exist, and it is imagination itself, what happens when you try to imagine something unimaginable? Can you understand the paradox? Gremmy's own body was an imagination too, conceived by that brain in that glass receptacle we saw at the end of the fight. And when trying to imagine a power so strong that it was capable of defeating Zaraki, he failed in that task and collapsed. And this could also be as a symbolic and partially literal representation of his body not resisting the amount of power he tried to imagine. So much so that when he starts to collapse, he kind of doesn't accept his own defeat. He says he lost to himself because he failed to imagine what would lead him to victory. And he even says that from now on, I will imagine a world where there is no imagination at all. That is, he's literally committing suicide. He's destroying his own imagination, which is his power, and at the same time, his source of life energy, so to speak. And at the end of the fight, Zaraki himself tells Gremmy, "In that little head of yours, you saw me as such an unimaginable beast, and it was this unimaginable beast that ended up killing you." Man, that says a lot about Bleach, because the fights Kubo writes are always so layered and implied poetry, and that's one of the reasons why Bleach is so amazing. I know there is another interpretation that says that Gremmy was able to imagine a power as strong as Zaraki's or higher, but forgot to create a body capable of deal with such power. And that would make sense, so I think this interpretation is okay too, but I think that Gremmy himself says something that go against that idea, so, well, open to speculation again. Of course, in the novels, it is mentioned that Yuha used to leave Gremmy locked away from the other Stern rituals, so we can understand that he wasn't free to interact in the same way as the other Quincies, precisely because Gremmy was too dangerous. Maybe if Gremmy had a chance to gain more experience, to become more mature, and had better fighting skills, without having to rely so much on his power of imagination, maybe he would really be unbeatable. But we know that's not the case. Anyway, I do not own the truth, so you can totally disagree with everything I'm saying. I mean, the only person who could really confirm the real reason for Gremmy's defeat is the author himself, Tide Kubo, and I don't think he will ever explain this kind of thing openly. Anyway, I intend to create other Bleach videos here on the channel, and I would like your company. If you like this video here, of course, and are interested in Bleach. As the anime is coming back, I'm going to focus the content on Bleach now at the beginning, but I plan to release videos about other animes too in the near future. I'm sorry that my pronunciation sucks and my accent is really heavy, but as you can see, I'm not an English native speaker. I'm trying my best here, and I intend to get better and better as I practice for these videos. In the upcoming video, I'm preparing content to list characters that could defeat Gremmy in a 1 versus 1 combat, so I think you're gonna like it. And please subscribe to this channel, hit the like, leave a comment about what you think or about other reviews you want to see here. If you could help me out, this is my first video, so I'm starting now and every little help counts a lot. So this is the video, I hope you enjoy it and I will see you in the next video. Thanks!